Another coaching change that we think had a big impact was Don Granato on Jeff Skinner, because for those unaware, and I was unaware, Jeff Skinner's got 30 goals this year.
Quietly.
Quietly.
Very, very quietly. We all know that Jeff Skinner had that 40-goal season in Buffalo when that team was really bad. Jack Eichel said, we need to add depth to this team or else I'm leaving. And I mean, fast forward, he left. But since that 40-goal season, he has followed it with a 14-goal and 7-goal season for a total of 21 goals over 2 years at a $9 million cap hit.
That is terrible.
Right. This year he's got 31 goals, 21 assists on 55 points. What do you see from Jeff Skinner?
I'm happy for him.
Me too.
He's both the guy that we kind of root for. Seems like a good dude. Had a lot of injury problems, so it's good to see somebody sort of come back from that. When I was looking at Evolving Hockey's analysis of him, and he's exactly sort of what you expect from Jeff Skinner. He this year's been top 10% in goals for and Corsi for per 60, but he's been the bottom 5% in expected goals against per 60 and the bottom 15 or so percent in Corsi against per 60. So that's exactly what you expect from a guy like Jeff Skinner, who's never been known for his defense, but he is terrible defensively, but he brings value offensively, which, you know, if you're going to suck defensively, you better score goals, and he's been doing that. So good for him.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff Skinner has always made a name for himself as being a very high-impact player. A really cool stat is that in the NHL, there's a list of expected share of their team's goals 5-on-5, which means pretty obviously you get X percent of your team's goals 5-on-5. And Jeff Skinner ranks third in the league in that category, only in front of guys like Jeff Carter, kind of crazy, and Alex Ovechkin, which means as a share of their team's goals 5-on-5, he is doing a lot for that Buffalo team. And, you know, we talk about what caused this resurgence. The answer, I think, is obviously, like you mentioned, the coaching change. Who was the coach before? Was it Ralph Kruger?
Ralph Kruger was it last year, and they brought in Don Granato this year.
Yeah, Ralph Kruger was playing him on like the fourth line with absolutely no talent.
And we don't watch Buffalo closely enough, but maybe he deserved to be there. But I think as a coach, you have to recognize this is a $9 million player. You have to try and figure it out rather than just giving up and throwing him on the fourth line, which just seems like what happened.
Yeah, but funny enough about Jeff Skinner, I was looking at his stats throughout the Ralph Kruger area when he was really struggling, and through all of his trials and tribulations, like his expected goals for rate did not change. The only thing that fell was his goals for, like that
his
plummeted.
Actual goals.
Yeah, so what that means in layman's terms is that Jeff Skinner was still producing chances. He just wasn't finishing.
Yeah.
Like if you look at his numbers this year and last year, he just couldn't finish. Patrick Bacon from Top Down Hockey released a pretty cool statistic that showed, again, his WAR percentile rank hasn't changed over the last 2 years. His offensive and defensive ranks haven't changed throughout the last 2 years. The only thing that changed was his finishing percentage. The guy just couldn't score.
Wow.
But, you know, looking back on this now, if there is one player statistically that you think would come back from a slump, it would be a player that is still producing chances, just having trouble scoring.
And if somebody is going through a slump, you would want that to be the case, because you know eventually things are going to turn around. You're not going to shoot 4% forever, and he's got a great shot.
Right, so I wonder if Ralph Kruger prematurely gave up on him. I mean, I wonder if these coaches look at these types of stats and go, hey, you know, is this player still producing and he's just in a finishing slump? Is he not driving play as well and therefore deserves to be on the fourth line? Because if you're Ralph Kruger looking at these stats, you go, well, Jeff Skinner still has it. He's just in a bit of a scoring slump. And like you said, the answer isn't move him to the fourth line. The answer is let him keep shooting. It will change.
Yeah, I think coaches become a little bit impatient, because when a guy like Jeff Skinner is not scoring, we highlighted how bad he is defensively.
True.
Those become glaringly obvious. And maybe coaches don't have the patience, or maybe some of them don't value analytics enough to think, okay, this guy gives us nothing on defense, but he's one of the only guys who can score on this team. You got to try and work with him and how we deploy him to put him in position for success. I think maybe coaches understandably so are focused on results so heavily because their jobs can be taken from them with a moment's notice. So maybe he's thinking, I'd rather not bank on him eventually scoring and just get him off the first line because we're getting shelled every game. I don't know what was going through his head, but it's definitely making him look a little silly now that he's come back and potted 30.
Very, very happy for him. Jeff Skinner's such a great dude. He's a very happy dude. I mean,
Yeah.
he looks like a locker room. He looks like he brings a lot to the locker room. I love him as a player. Very happy for him.
Right. So Jeff Skinner is definitely one of the comeback stories of the year, but we want to each pick our own comeback player of the year, let's say. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. When I think of the comeback player of the year, the answer is a player drafted first overall. I could be wrong, but 2014, 2015, that was taken to be a rock on the blue line by the Florida Panthers. I think it's pretty obvious now. Take a guess.
Aaron Ekblad?
Yeah, Aaron Ekblad for
Okay.
sure. Last year, he was hurt a lot, so I'm going to use the stats from the year before in order to compare him to this year now. The year before, he'd scored like 5 goals and 36 assists. He was on pace for about 50 points, which I mean isn't bad for a defenseman, but for a guy that you took first overall that you thought was going to be like Victor Hedman 2.0, he hasn't been great. And I mean, this year, when you look at this dude's stats, 15 goals, 42 assists, and only 61 games played because he's hurt. He's now on the long-term injured reserve with a broken leg. He was at a 20-goal pace and 77-point pace.
Wow.
That would have put him 4th in scoring among current defensemen behind Makar, Yossi, and Hedman. He would have beat guys like Carlson and Fox. Like, it's pretty insane to think about, right? And when you offensively, he's been amazing. But when you look at him as a defensive pairing as well, continuing on these offensive statistics, him and Uyghur rank 4th in the league in expected goals for as a defensive pairing. That team is driving offense. And earlier in the year, when that power play was among the best in the league, like before Claude Giroux came there, he did a great job anchoring that power play. He logs minutes. He's doing what Florida drafted him to do. I mean, he's my comeback player of the year. Who do you got?
That's a really good choice. I guess hopefully for him he can come back by playoff time. For the Leafs, maybe not. But I like that choice in Aaron Ekblad. Now, my comeback player of the year, I know people may not consider him to be a pure comeback season because he's been sort of steady throughout his whole career. But I'm picking Chris Kreider.
Oh, that's a great choice. That's definitely a comeback story.
Yeah, and dating back to just 2 years ago, just for some extra context, he was a below average offensive player, and he was very, very bad defensively. And so I'm not sure if he's turned that defensive side around because I don't watch the Rangers enough, and I couldn't find anything about his defensive play analytically. But I think it's safe to say he turned around offensively from a barely above average to an elite goal scorer with 50 goals and 71 points in 75 games this year. 50 goals for Chris Kreider? I don't think I could have rattled off before the season started 10 to 15, maybe even 30 players that I thought might have scored 50 before I got to Chris Kreider's name. And that's not a slight on Chris Kreider. I think it just goes to show how good he's been and how much of maybe a comeback we can consider this to be. And funnily enough, Matthews just broke a franchise record of 54 goals. Well, the Rangers record is also 54, and he has a chance to break it. So that would be kind of cool. Coming back after being an average player, signing that big contract. I think he's a captain as well.
No, they currently don't have a captain.
They don't have a captain.
They're thinking about giving it to him.
Yeah, and maybe this is making a good case for that. That would be kind of cool for him to, take that next level and also break the record.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's my comeback player of the year. I think Rangers fans have been hyping him up. I just searched his name on Twitter yesterday when I was just trying to research a little bit, and there was so much Chris Kreider propaganda, like so much love for him on Twitter. I think Rangers fans are pretty excited to have a guy this electric on their team, and good for them because the Rangers need to be relevant.
Yeah, I think if anything, he would even have more notoriety this year if it wasn't for Igor Shesterkin having the year that he's having.
Yeah.
When you look on Twitter, all of the beat writers in New York are talking about Igor Shesterkin, and then Chris Kreider's name comes up. But when you think about it, 50 goals is crazy. How old is Chris Kreider? Like 35 or something like that? 34?
I think he's in his late 20s, early 30s.
He's that young?
Yeah, I think he's like a guy who's been around for a long time.
He looks like he's 35. There's no way.
He is 30. He's 30.
Wow. Okay, so he's still towards like the middle end of his prime.
Yeah, he's got probably a few years left. I don't know if he'll score 50 again, but he's going to be an effective player still for a few more years.
What's kind of crazy, too, is that if you told me to pick a couple players on the New York Rangers who would score 50, he's not. That comes first. It'd be Zibanejad and Panarin first.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And never mind one of the first guys in the league that you think of, not even the first guy on their team. And he scores a bunch of his goals from within 5 feet of the net, tipping pucks, getting garbage goals. And
goal's a goal.
A goal is a goal. And then that's... I feel like those types of goals are somewhat sustainable because you have to be there to get them.
Yep.
If he keeps putting himself in those spots, I think he'll keep scoring.